So excited to introduce Elinor Lipman, known to many as an award-winning author of 11 novels, including the Inn at Lake Devine and On Turpentine Lane. In her latest book we're here to discuss, Good Riddance, we follow the adventures of Daphne, who, while living in New York, one day decides to declutter. She determines the yearbook she inherited from her late mother doesn't spark joy, and promptly chucks it into in her apartment building's trash. Little does she know that there is a aspiring documentarian living down the hall who saves the yearbook and uses it to begin unraveling secrets from Daphne's and her mother's past for a possible documentary. What follows is a hilarious, witty, and heartfelt story filled with a great cast of characters as they all try to help, or maybe not so much, Daphne navigate this new reality, all thanks to the revelations of one tiny little yearbook. Good Riddance is already garnering praise. Publishers Weekly wrote Lipman's satisfying latest is a worthy addition to her long lineup of smart, witty novels. I am also a huge fan. I've already read it cover to cover. I can't say I've personally sold every single copy of her previous book on Turpentine Lane. I think I got really close. And I fully intend to do the same thing with Good Riddance. It's such an amazing book. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Elinor Lipman to Politics and Prose.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's so great to come back here. And, I always start the same way, or maybe it's been the last 3 visits, but, the store, Carla Cohen was the founder and owner. And the most wonderful introduction, although I adored your introduction, but Carla, one day without, I had no notice, she stood up, and it turned out to be the last time she introduced me. And it was a letter she wrote. So it just said, "Dear Elinor," as I was just sitting right over there. And it was just what the books had meant to her. And, it was just, I was flabbergasted. And Carla, those of you who knew Carla, she used to tell people that she discovered me. Why not? Why not? But also, I remember telling my editor, publisher, whatever, publicist, that she had hand sold X 100 copies of Then She Found Me, and I'd never even knew that verb. I was so new at this that I didn't know there was a verb that was hand sell, hand sold. So anyway, I have a lot of history with Politics and Prose. I think this is probably my 10th visit here. So I'm going to read just the beginning-ish, and then, then I'm going, usually you start with how you came to write it, but that's second because it gives too much away. Okay. Chapter 1, The Grateful Class of '68. For a few weeks after my mother's death, I was in possession of the painstakingly annotated high school yearbook that had been dedicated to her by the grateful class of 1968. Yes, she'd been their English teacher and yearbook advisor, but that didn't explain her obsessive collecting of signatures and tributes next to every senior's photo. I could picture her, age 23, her first job after college, roaming the corridors of Pickering High School, pen and book in hand, coaxing the shyest, least engaged boy or girl to sign. Write anything. I want to remember every one of you. Could you personalize it? Just a few words. But there would be more, her own embellishments, her judgments and opinions written next to those photos in her small, legible hand, a different color ink, red, green, blue, for several milestone reunions, which she attended compulsively, starting with the 5th and continuing until her last, their 45th. Her margin notes were coded but easily deciphered. M for married, S for single, D for dead, DIV for divorced, DWI said a few. AIDS, suggested one notation. Same dress she wore at 15th, my mother recorded. Very plump was one of her milder put-downs. Braces, pregnant, occasionally still pretty. Looks older than I do was one of her favorite notes. Still holds PHS record for 100-yard dash, and one, and danced with him, appeared often. Had I known about this project as it was happening, I hadn't. Several reunions were held before I was born, and later ones, attended even after she retired, weren't discussed with her two daughters. After all, we might know some of these graduates as the parents of our friends, or our own teachers, or custodians, or police officers, or panhandlers, townspeople still. A handwritten codicil on the last page of my mother's will said, "My daughter Daphne will take possession of the Pickering High School's yearbook, the Monadnockian," and nothing more. I took it back with me to Manhattan, where it stayed on my shelf for a month, till I read a magazine article about decluttering. The test, would I ever reread this novel, these college textbooks, these magazines? Did I really need a Portuguese-English dictionary? What about the Panini Press and my dead BlackBerry? The expert recommended this: hold the item in question, be it book or sweater or socks or muffin tin, to your chest, over your heart, and ask yourself, does this thing spark joy? I hugged the yearbook. Nothing. Well, not nothing, worse than that, an aversion. Apparently, I didn't want, nor would I miss, this testimony to the unsympathetic, snarky side of my mother's character. The best-selling decluttering wizard said the property owner had to be tough, even ruthless. I certainly was that. Goodbye, ugly. I brought it with me. Okay. Goodbye, ugly, white vinyl, ink-stained yearbook with your put-downs and your faint smell of mildew. Maybe it was my mother's legacy in a time capsule, but it had failed to stir emotion in my bosom. Possessing too much stuff anyway, in a cramped apartment, bookshelves overflowing, I threw it out. Or rather, being a good citizen, I walked it down the hall to my building's trash closet, straight into the recycling bin. 2. I'd never met Geneva Weisenkorn, despite our residing at opposite ends of the same hallway. Our introduction came in the form of a note slipped under my door announcing, "I found something that belongs to you. Are you home?" Followed by an email address and phone, office, and mobile numbers. My wallet, my keys, I checked my pocketbook, all there. Had a misdelivered piece of mail or dropped glove been traced back to me? I went to my laptop and wrote to this seemingly thoughtful stranger, asking what possession of mine she'd found. She wrote back immediately, "A high school yearbook. We need to talk." No, we didn't. I hit reply and wrote, "Thanks anyway, but I recycled that." Then added a postscript. It has no meaning or value, sentimental or otherwise, in case she was looking for a reward. "Contact info?" she answered. My first mistake, I sent it. Immediately, my phone rang. After my wary hello, I heard, "I think you'll be very interested in what I have to say." I asked how she knew the yearbook, which I now decided I needed back, belonged to me, because I found it with magazines that had your name on the subscription labels. I said, I'd never forgive myself if a yearbook with all that personal stuff written in it got into the hands of a stranger. Then why'd you throw it out? I thought it would go to some landfill or get turned into whatever recycled paper gets turned into. I know the rules. If it's trash left at the curbside or at the dump, the possessor has relegated ownership. The possessor has relegated ownership? Was I talking to this rag picker's lawyer? Finders keepers, in other words? Precisely. I tried again. Maybe there is some law in the books about garbage rights, but the polite thing would be to return the yearbook, which any jury would see had personal content. A jury? Are you going to call a lawyer? Or 911? I'd like to hear that conversation. Why contact me in the first place, I asked. You found the yearbook. Why not just keep it? I'd never know. Because I wanted to go about this in the most professional manner possible. Believe me, intellectual property can be a real shitstorm. We should talk face to face. I mean, I want to get this settled before I leave for my writer's retreat. Get what settled? So far, it was just a question of the keeping or the giving back. In case she thought she had leverage, that she'd expose my mother's poison pen, I said, you realize that the owner of the book is dead and it's too late to embarrass her. Embarrass her? I'm stunned you would say that. Your mother wasn't writing for her own amusement. There's no question she had a future audience in mind. Did she? What audience? Who else could possibly care? I don't know what you want from me, I said. Permission. Was I catching on? Not yet. She asked again if we could talk face to face. I said, is this really necessary? Be there in a jiff, she said. She rang my doorbell 40 minutes later, finding me newly annoyed with her interpretation of a jiff. Her breathing was labored from the short walk, no doubt attributable to her extreme bulk. I recognized her, having shared elevator rides or exchanged nods in the mailroom, due to her colorful, bigger-than-life appearance and persona. She was large, wide, round-faced, with black curls that tumbled around her face, eyeglasses upswept, employing rhinestones. Sorry it took so long, but I didn't want to come empty-handed. She passed me an open shoebox lined messily with wax paper that contained several layers of cookies. I figured, who doesn't like chocolate chip? They should be cooling on a rack. No yearbook in sight, however. Cookies, I said. Really, you shouldn't have. They're Pillsbury slice and bake. I always keep a package in my fridge. Come in, I said. As soon as she stepped into my living room, I could see she was puzzled. Is there another room, she seemed to be saying? Who lives like this? She looked around, asked if the hallway went anywhere. To the bedroom and bath, and my kitchen, of course. It's very cute. What do you do? Even though I'd progressed no further than registration, I said, I'm studying to be a chocolatier. Where? Online. She couldn't have looked less impressed. Are there jobs doing that? And do they pay? With that, I officially categorized Geneva as a boundary-challenged chatterbox whom I didn't want to be chummy with. Haven't we just met? I asked. I know, very bad habit, asking personal questions. It's not so much nosiness, but a failure to know what's personal and what's just conversation. Oh, never mind. I need more people who can tell me when I've crossed the line. We were still standing. I motioned toward the couch, said I was going to put some of the cookies on a plate. No, the cookies are for you, she said. I have that highly annoying type 2 diabetes. If I lose weight, they tell me I'll shake it. No cookie, but do you have vodka? I did. I poured us each a glass and returned. She raised hers and said, to your mother, the most committed yearbook advisor who ever lived. After my half-hearted clink, I said, I don't understand why you'd want someone else's yearbook from a class she didn't graduate in. I ate it up. It's fascinating. It's got a point of view and an attitude. I can't wait to hear more about her. Such as husband, marriage, interests, hobbies, wardrobe, crushes, boyfriends, lovers. Okay, I said, this just got creepy. I'm her daughter. She left it to me in her will, and now I'm asking for it back. Why? Why? Did I not just say why? It tells a story, Geneva continued. Correction, it tells 100 stories. I remember the exact moment I knew this had my name on it. Next to one girl's picture, a pretty brunette with a perfect flip. Under future, she had beautician. Your mother drew an arrow across the page to a good-looking guy, thin face, Italian last name, whom she married. What do you think his future was? I have no idea. Ballroom dance. Guess how that turned out? At least according to your mother's note. You can bet the D stands for divorced and the H is for homosexual. I said, no, it didn't. H meant home or here, that they still lived in Pickering. The expression greeting that remark clearly meant, poor you, born yesterday. Next, I tried, let's just say my mother would be flattered that a total stranger finds the yearbook so interesting. Fine. You'll read it and enjoy it, and then you'll be done with it. I don't think you understand. Then, as if it explained and justified everything, I'm a filmmaker. I swallowed the rest of my vodka and poured a refill. Are you saying you'd like to turn the yearbook into a movie? Because I don't see, not a feature film, a documentary that explores what happened to the class of 1968. Where are they now? Who's married, divorced, happy, straight, gay, dead, cryogenically frozen, dreams fulfilled or dashed? But who wants to watch a documentary about small-town nobodies? People have reunions. We all have reunion hopes, don't we? Go to your reunion, find your old boyfriend, and run off together. I told her it wasn't just my permission she needed, but also my father's. I threw in my sister's too, and my father's cousin Julian, a lawyer, knowing that not one of us would give this cockamamie plan a green light. She said, "Let me remind you, I rescued this from the rubbish heap, but I'm all about collaboration. Sure, ask your relatives how they'd feel about an award-winning filmmaker putting Pinkerton High School on the map." "Pickering," I said. Just if this went forward and you found some of the graduates, would they see what my mother wrote about them because she turned over in her grave?" Her expression said it all. What a wonderful idea. Hadn't thought of that, but wow, just the tension this project was missing. A threat of last resort. If I told the building super that you picked through everyone's garbage, word would get around. Why? Why? Because it's disgusting. People throw away personal stuff. They declutter. And you know what I'd say to that? I'm a documentary filmmaker, which makes me a researcher, even a scavenger. I asked what these award-winning documentaries were. Too many to name. Anyone I might have seen? Most recently, last Passover. Passover, I repeated, on the Jewish channel. I said I had basic cable, which didn't include the Jewish channel. What was the film about? The last matzah factory in Brooklyn. She handed me her empty glass. "I thought you'd be thrilled. The documentary-watching world would get to know a woman who otherwise lived in near obscurity. I'm hoping to find archival footage of her, the teacher all the boys and probably half the girls were in love with. No wonder she kept going to reunions." I asked if she'd forgotten that New Hampshire was the center of the universe every 4 years, with reporters flocking there for the presidential primary. Granite staters are always being filmed. It's ho-hum. Good luck finding people who aren't sick of having a microphone stuck in their faces. When this seemed to have the desired dampening effect, I added, "Maybe you'll need to find a yearbook from a state that gets less attention." From a pocket within the folds of her voluminous dress, she produced a phone. I could tell without a view of the screen that she was Googling something. "I'll admit," she said, "that I wasn't factoring in the primary, but it could be just the thing that could get me the money I need." Money? I told her I didn't follow. "New Hampshire is one of the original 13 colonies," she announced. Was she thinking she'd find yearbooks from the other 12 colonies? "Do you mean a yearbook series?" "No, I was just thinking grants, Frontline, the National Endowment for the Arts, Daughters of the American Revolution, Kickstarter, Dartmouth." Dartmouth. New Hampshire, right? I'd release it in an off year, just as residents were missing all the attention. She rose, nodding grandly, turned at the door and said, "We both know your mother would be all for it." What kind of bargaining chip did I have? Geneva had the yearbook in her possession, and I, who didn't believe in visitations from the other side, found myself wondering whether this was exactly what my mother would have wanted. This is the yearbook that didn't spark joy. So the story that I couldn't tell you beforehand was I was at a flea market in Stormville, New York. This is the 1955 yearbook from Keene, New Hampshire High School. You're nodding. Is that any connection with Keene, New Hampshire? No.
I know people from there.
Okay. Oh, you might know one of them. Okay. They're children. There you go. Okay. So at the end, I didn't buy this, but my significant other, who should know better, really, because he's an art appraiser, and had just turned down. No, he didn't want that. Even though he's from Liverpool originally, he didn't want that print of Liverpool the Mersey because it was $25 and it was a copy and rubbish. So I go over to another table, and then a few minutes later, he comes over with this. And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "It's a yearbook." And I said, how much was it? And he said, $12. And I said, why did you want that? And he said, Americana. So he had never had a yearbook, and at least they didn't have yearbooks at Quarry Bank in Liverpool, where John Lennon graduated from that a few years before he did. So, okay, so that was the part. That was that. But then got it back home, and he's reading it page by page, doesn't miss a page, word for word, studying it, and discovers that this was the copy, and it has the woman's name on it, her possession, and she is red, green, blue ink. This is the woman that owned it. So there she is, English teacher, yearbook advisor. It's dedicated to her, and this is her copy. And as he kept moving on, discovered that she had gone to the reunions and made notes, and they were color-coded. Red ink, green ink, blue ink, some in pencil. And the pencil ones were sometimes just dots. So I took liberties with that. I didn't immediately say, oh my God, this is my next novel. But just one day I was driving and I said to myself, I inherited a yearbook that belonged to my mother, and then it became this. But I enlarged upon, I make the comments snarkier, and I invented the hanky-panky that I have this poor, her name is Ruth Raymond. Okay, don't repeat that. Ruth Raymond. So, but the very interesting thing that Jonathan found, his name is Jonathan, fascinating. There's the faculty, and they are in Keene, New Hampshire, and it's all like Radcliffe, Columbia, all of there. They have, where they Colby, Bates, Boston University. This is what teachers, how that was their credentials, teaching at Keene High School. So I found that pretty interesting too. And so that was it. Made up this pretty much. There were a few things like the plump, very plump came directly from there. And recently talking to someone in Keene, he said, a younger person said, I know some people from that class. And I thought, he must be guessing. And then he emailed me and gave me their names. And, wait. She, of course, had written on their pages. And I said, okay, here she is. I'm going to leave this up here. Mary, and look, so it's Mrs. Don Mackey, who's in the class. And I said, and then I looked up Don Mackey, who's very handsome. And I said, she's the prettiest girl in the class, and he's the handsomest boy. And they married. Okay. So anyway, that's that. That's how it happened. Okay. And I'm going to Keene, New Hampshire. I'm doing a reading there on February 28th. So I have a PowerPoint. Of course, they don't have whatever you need to do a PowerPoint, but it's on my computer, so if anyone wants to see it. But so anyway, Keene, New Hampshire. And anyway, I'd be happy to take questions, but don't feel obliged. Oh, well, I'll just tell you, to break the ice here. At my reading in New York, I kept the yearbook on the desk, and people were telling me stories about their own yearbook. And my favorite was that one of my friends said that she'd gone to a small Catholic high school, and they didn't have a yearbook. They used to have a yearbook, but they hadn't had one for 5 years because the girl, who was either the president of the class or something, she got pregnant. And the nuns said that they didn't no more yearbooks because it brought back bad memories. Yeah. Before she got to the pregnant, I said, let me guess. She got pregnant. Yeah. So anyway, so let me say, so if you have questions, I don't like to beg. I always say I don't like to beg because then people start asking mercy questions like, oh, someone better ask a question. So. Yes. We have probably the same degree of fun I have for the other books, which is now what. I don't outline, so it's now what, what happens. And I always knew that it would be thrown away. And there was another, I always do this. I start it and then I throw it away, and maybe it's a chapter or maybe it's more. But in the first iteration, it was also thrown away. It was put out on the street where somebody who, you know, how people drive around and get what they want from the recycling bin. So for some reason, I didn't know why, I knew she'd throw it away, and then what would happen. So I would say thank you, but this same degree, not fun. I mean, it has its, there's the satisfaction of finishing a chapter that you think like, oh, I don't know how to write anymore. And, and then I polish it until I can polish it no more. And then I think, oh, that chapter's not bad. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi there.
Hello.
Did you do any research on Ruth?
Tried, Googled, couldn't find her, and no obituary. But the Mary from the yearbook was at the Keene Sentinel did a feature about it that came out actually yesterday, and I had told them the names of a few people who were allegedly still alive, and they found Mary in Florida, and she said that Ruth was her favorite teacher. And she couldn't come to the reading because she was in Florida. But I expect somebody at the reading, there'll be, because of the piece in the paper.
And are people sending you yearbooks?
No, not people. A little bit. Somebody at a reading last night in Atlanta said, out of the blue, at work, my yearbook, I thought I lost it, arrived in the mail, and it was her yearbook, and it was all signed. She didn't know who sent it, and yep.
It's probably Ruth.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's good. A little stand up. Yeah. And let me see. Oh, hello.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit more about how Genevieve appeared to you? Because she's such an interesting and infuriating character.
She's my villain.
Yeah.
I let me think how Geneva, there was something about the trash closet, and I knew somebody would find it. And I think had seen somebody, might have even been a friend of mine, so the appearance, I don't know why I had to make her, I think I wanted to make her a big presence. But, I had a little fun with her because she's not a success. Her father is her producer, essentially. The father puts up money and she does some, wedding videos on the side and underwrites that. So she just appeared for me. And then as I go along, it was just, what does she do next? What does she do next? And she's very, not so much a villain, but has meant just the way she's a chatterbox. She has many annoying qualities. And I don't know how I came up. I think I called her something else soon before Geneva. And then Geneva came right up, and that stuck for the rest of the book. I often change names. You can do that now, find and find and change. Yeah. But I don't want to keep, or as I say, beg for questions. But I will sign, and you can look at the yearbook if you're interested. So thank you so much for coming.